Welcome to this HRD podcast. We are joined today by Dr. Robert Hogan, founder and president of Hogan Assessments.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are.
So we'll start off, Robert, by asking, what is high potential and why do most companies struggle to present a clear definition?
Well, high potential concerns people who potentially can do a very good job for you in the future, who are working at a current job. You're thinking about promoting them to a higher level job, and the question is who to choose. And where the problems come from have to do with the fact that inside organizations, it's sort of all politics all the time, which is to say bosses don't actually know who's doing a good job, they just know who they like. It's a really famous piece, a very important, significant milestone piece of leadership research published in the 1980s by a fellow named Fred Luthens. He followed a sample of 415 managers for a year on a daily basis, watching what they would do, watching what they actually did. And then at the end of the year, he separated them into two groups. The first group contained people who were getting rapid promotions and big pay increases, and the second group contained people whose teams were performing at a high level. And the really important finding was that those two groups did not overlap. As I say, the people who were getting the rapid promotions and the pay raises spent their time networking and playing politics, whereas the guys who were actually whose teams were actually performing well spent their time working on their teams. And organizations typically define the first group as high performers or high potentials, when in fact it's the second group.
How does one find future leaders of a company, and are HR teams unpacking this concept correctly when evaluating talent within their respective organizations?
Well, I think the way you find the best single way to identify leadership is to ask the staff, the consumers of the person's leadership. There's the staff always know who the good leaders are. The bosses, the people in the C-suite, almost never know. And unfortunately, the HR people, it seems to me, typically have a strong incentive to keep the bosses happy, as opposed to delivering real talent. It's all about being database as opposed to getting past politics. Just ask the subordinates to evaluate their bosses, and that'll tell you very quickly who's an effective leader and who isn't.
When it comes to leadership competencies, is there such a thing as one size fits all?
Well, I think there is, but the consensus of academic opinion would disagree with me. I think the academic study of leadership has gone basically nowhere. It's basically inconclusive. My review of the literature suggests that and this is a data-based review, that there are 4 features that define effective leadership, and they're universal. It doesn't matter when, where, or what organization or what level in the organization. The first thing people want to see, so this is leadership from the subordinate's perspective, and that's what matters, because they're the consumers of leadership. So from the subordinate's perspective, leaders need 4 things. First, they need integrity. You have to be able to trust them, that they'll keep their word, that they'll honor their obligations, that they'll follow up, that they won't play favorites, they won't exploit the organization for their own purposes. The first thing you need is integrity. The second thing you need is competence. The person actually needs to know something about the business and be able to talk about it and deal with it in a sensible way. This has been a problem since the mid-1970s with the cult of the MBA. The theory behind the MBA is that there are formal principles of leadership that can be taught and then applied to any organization whatsoever, which means that in-depth knowledge of what the company is doing is irrelevant. All you need is a Harvard MBA. That's why staff can tell right away whether you know what you're talking about or not. Junior officers in the military, the petty officers tell them, just stay out of the way because you don't know anything about the business. So first, they need integrity. Second, they need competence. They have hands-on experience with the actual business. The third thing that staff want to see is good decision-making. You make sound, defensible decisions in a timely way based on the data you've got. And the big thing about decision-making is it's not about getting it right, because you get it wrong. The data show that people make the base rate of decision-making, correct decision-making in business is about 50%. It means in principle, you won't get it right. Real people with good judgment are people who pay attention to the feedback and say, oops, I made a mistake, I need to fix this. So good decision-making is not so much about getting it right as it is about being willing to change your opinion in the face of negative feedback. So people want to see integrity, they want to see competence, they want to see good decision-making or good judgment, and then the fourth thing that the staff want to see is some sense of vision. Can you put out a compelling or interesting or engaging story about what we're doing and why we're doing it and why it matters and why your role in this process is significant. So that's it. Integrity, confidence, judgment, and vision.
Great. What are your 3 top tips for assessing employee potential?
Ask the subordinates and ask the peers, but it's other people's observed. Don't ask the boss. The bad guys are typically really good at sucking up to the boss and then ignoring the staff. So the tip is just ask the people who observe this guy. So it'll be peers and subordinates.
What is the future for high potential programs, and how important is science in identifying high potential talent?
Unless people use science to identify high potential talent, there will be no future for high potential programs. The worst single trend in modern life, I think, is the degree to which people want to believe in intuition over facts or data. You may recall famously a couple of weeks ago when Donald Trump was saying something was just absurd. One of his staffers said, well, he has his alternative facts. To the degree that people operate on the basis of alternative facts, nothing possible. It's impossible to make any kind of progress whatsoever.
How do you nurture your high-performing talent pool to avoid career derailment or losing them to competitors?
Well, the way you nurture high-performing talent is to make sure that they're exposed to good management, and the chances of that happening are only 1 in 4. Our data indicate that somewhere between 65 and 75% of existing managers are actually alienating their staff. That would include all the high potential talent. So biggest single thing is to make sure they don't have to work for an intolerable boss.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Hogan. For more information on the forthcoming HR Director Summit Europe and for thought leadership from global HR leaders, please visit hrdsummit.eu. Thank you for listening.